Yeah. Okay, then let us move on to the question which is related to cybercrime. What opportunities you see in digital crime forensic science for information security professionals?
As you must be, everybody is knowing in the audience that role of this infosec people is to assure that the adequate security is in place wherever they work, and by doing so they are aware of all the I say loopholes or the loosely tied doors of the network. So they will be, if they know this digital forensics, so they will be able to know the what are, they will be able to identify the right footprints, right evidence, and then using their infosec knowledge they can track it better. So keeping this in mind, we have in our university, that is Gujarat Forensic Sciences University, we have started a special course on MSc with digital forensic and information assurance. So I think if they are having this combination of knowledge, then they will be a good asset for the country.
So, if there is a right kind of educational background people take in terms of information security professionals, if they get also a background of forensic investigation, then you see a lot of opportunities.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now we move on. I have finished with 3 questions which I had, and of course, if time permits, I will come back with more questions. But let us move on to the audience. If you have any questions, please ask. If you want to ask with to any particular panel member, you please start with the name. Otherwise, we can take as it goes.
So, Mr. Sangvi, Hemant here. I hope you can see me a little.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things which fascinated me was setting up this whole university.
Yeah.
And, if you can just explain what you do and what is the philosophy and the thinking behind setting up this, and share some examples, good case studies,
Sure, sure. Reason behind this establishment of this university was that before 2009, we are running number of training courses in the laboratory, forensic science laboratory of Government of Gujarat at Gandhinagar. And then the then CM and current PM Sri Narendra Modi ji came to know that we are conducting so many number of programs. So then they said that why don't you start an university? As there is a, there is very no such experts, not only in the digital forensic, but you take it any crime investigation, experts are not available. So why don't we train our people and make them experts? So with that thought, we this university was started, and from 2009 August it is in functional, and now we are having more than 32 courses which are very specific to the forensic only, and this is the only university across the globe dedicated to forensic science. There are universities and institutes running forensic courses, but this is the only forensic university across the globe. So with that, we, and if I talk about especially about the digital forensics, we are having very state of the art facility in the university. For that, we have started a threat lab in the university where you can understand, you can virtually create the entire environment of your organization, and can virtually test what type of vulnerabilities are there in the network. You can send some payloads, and then you can test whether your system is withstand again those things or not. That is also possible in the lab. And we are also having one of the topmost security guys who is in advisor to the American President Mr. Obama also. So he is also there in our institute for the guidance to the students. So you can understand this is what means university is too busy with this type of activities, and we are conducting number of seminars, workshops for the of the international nature. If I talk about the laboratories, you take any very, you can say, very interesting case or very sensitive case, it has referred to this lab, be it of digital forensic or any other for psychological assessment, brain mapping, narco, everything that has been referred to this lab.
So one of the aspect of digital crime is to be prepared, and the fact that the university has got a very comprehensive laboratory to tackle the digital crime and related aspect is in itself is a great achievement, because we can tackle this only through the preparedness and nothing else. So anyone else?
I have a question for the advocate. Um, in your vast experience of analyzing the cyber crimes, what patterns have you observed or trends?
So if I can categorize the kind of cyber crimes I have dealt with since the last 15, 16 years, majority could be classified as the insider frauds for data theft. And it is definitely something that has been happening for many number of years. Many reported, many not reported. Some data theft cases get reported only for the sake of reporting, so that the company's data which has been breached does not get hauled up for a breach of NDA from a foreign entity. Even those kinds of cases we've seen. So if I need to classify, the first category that comes to my mind is data theft, which could be intellectual property theft, um, data which could be sensitive personal information, or data which is a valuable asset to the company. The second kinds of cases that I've come across are in terms of individuals getting affected by loss of money through their banking accounts. Again, at a very large scale, the banks have been hauled up for not maintaining reasonable security practices by the adjudicating officer, at least for the state of Maharashtra. And also across the countries, though the adjudicating officer in Maharashtra was very, very active in adjudicating such cases. So those kinds of cases have been there, getting reported time and again. Social media crimes, again, a very vast portion as to what can happen through social media. Cases of cyber stalking, cases of defamation, cases uh, of intentionally maligning image of either a corporate entity or individuals. Again, sorry? Or a country. In fact, let me also cite one very interesting example or a case that I came across, and how social media is getting used by even corporate entities without really knowing how our employees or people associated with the entity are using social media and what kind of a backlash it can bring onto the board. One very famous educational institution in Pune had these Google groups getting started by their professors for placement, for the purpose of placement. So they had Google groups starting with the institution's name and several Google groups. The reason why, when one person leaves, that Google group gets abandoned and somebody starts a new one without really knowing how many of such groups on social media are floating. The management first has no clue that professors are using Google groups for placements. Now, one fine day, they realize that highly sensitive messages directed towards a particular religious community are getting sent through these through these Google groups having the institution's name. And suddenly there's panic. We don't even know how many groups we have. We don't know who are the managers, whether they are currently in employment or have already left. If they have left, where they have gone. And if I had to analyze the case and to put what kind of liability that would come onto the board, that was something which was a criminal liability, and the first thing that we had to prepare was perhaps for anticipatory bail. Now, something that was taken up so casually by an institution of repute had led to a situation like this. So, I mean, just taking off from where I left earlier, social media crimes, knowingly and unknowingly, people can just get embroiled into it. So, yes, these are the 4 types of crimes that I've come across to a large extent.
Yeah, so insider crime, that is the biggest thing which Advocate Bhagwat mentioned. And with the rampant use of privileged user IDs, I mean, those who are from core IT field will agree with me, especially in the support function, production support function. We rampantly use privileged user IDs, and sometimes I tell my colleagues that there are two things which are protecting us. One, the fear of God. There are still God-fearing people in our community, luckily. And two, because people don't know what to do with the information they have got. Okay, there is no technology right now protecting us. So yeah, that is, I agree with you that insiders committing crime is the biggest category. Okay, we will take next question.
Yeah. I have a question to Vaishali. Uh, all said and done that we have legal framework. You said that on 2008 cyber law is very well, have a very good legal framework for companies to take precautions. Now, if at all in corporate sector, if they are prepared, and if there is an attack, okay, and they're taking all due diligence and everything is said and done, in today's world, especially India is lacking in, giving the justice in time. So on that front, I would like to ask you a question that in this cybercrime administration, how long it takes for a company to get remediation or, have justice to their favor? I think it takes a pretty long time. Like any other crime, it goes on and on. What is your opinion about it?
I'm quite happy I'm not part of the judiciary, but as I'm going to answer this as a lawyer. But as an officer of the court, I will answer where the delays are, and especially in terms of cybercrime litigation, what happens. So first, overall litigation, let me answer your question as to, because this is, every time I'm on a panel, I have to answer this question, and I have to explain that dialogue of the Hindi film which has epitomized our profession is Tariq pe Tariq. Yes, are we part of it? Yes, sometimes we are part of it, because even perhaps I want to watch a movie and adjourn I have done that in my career, that I want to go watch a movie, so I've adjourned a case. So yes, lawyers are party to it. But given the kind of framework that we have, it is very, very difficult for judges to to dispose of cases at the rate that they get filed. If we look at the machinery that we have, and I urge all of you to spend a day in court and see how judges work, they will have 50 cases listed on the board and perhaps 4 to 5 cases disposed in a particular day. You will not find the judge napping. You will not find the judge, not looking at his cell phone through the day. He will sit on the dais from 11 to 5:30 or 6. Now we have fast evening courts where the judge will sit to dispose cases, be it the district court, lower court, or higher courts. You will see that the judges are doing their bit for ensuring that there is a fast disposal of cases. Now, coming to cyber crimes, let's say there are 4 stakeholders to ensure that there is good disposal: lawyers, judges, law enforcement, and litigants. If all work hand in hand towards the only paramount object of delivering justice, then perhaps we would be in this utopian state of, that justice getting delivered on time. However, each one will not be doing this diligently at one time or altogether. And you will see litigants who are filing cases, especially criminal cases, are getting filed only for the initial relief of raid or arrest for the want of investigation. That itself is considered as relief. So a company will come and say, here is a prima facie evidence that 2 of my employees have ran away with data. Let me initiate a case, let them get arrested because cases are cognizable, and later on, if nothing happens in the case, I am all right. So what happens? A raid is done, or the person is arrested, brought before the magistrate for initial bail, and then the case is nobody's baby. The complainant will not come to attend the case. The lawyer will wait for the complainant to give instructions, and then the judge has to keep on just giving dates for the case because the litigant is not interested. Coming to law enforcement, yes, there is a lot of need. Still, there is a lot of scope for capacity building, but we are much better than what we were 10 years back. Law enforcement is now very capable of handling cases of cyber crimes where it comes to initial investigation, including we have absolutely state-of-the-art forensic capabilities. Though time is a factor, I'm not saying that the moment case gets filed, everything just goes on in order or is fine. There, it does take time, but if litigants, law enforcement, lawyers, and judges work in tandem, then definitely I have seen during my career cybercrime cases meeting the logical end. And let me tell you, 8 to 7 years is pretty quick, a quick time for a cybercrime case to see its logical end of a conviction or an acquittal.
Yeah. So, the shortage of judges had almost brought our esteemed Supreme Court Chief Justice to tears. So that's no wonder. I have one follow-up question to Mr. Sundar. That filing the case is something, which happens afterwards. But how Indian companies are ready to even handle the security incidents? Are we, one is preparedness, and then something has happened, and then there is a lot to be done when something has happened, right? So how well you have seen in your contact with the industry, how well we are prepared to handle the incidents?
So again, on the preparedness of the companies on security incidents, I'll again slice the companies into sectors, and because the preparedness is far different from the sectors that they are in. So let's take the non-financial services to start with in this case. First, in terms of security incidents, some of the companies which are in the non-financial services, telecom, and pretty much if you put the FMCG also in that group, it's extremely bad. In some cases, they don't even know they have gone through an incident. That's the sorry state of where we are. Somebody came, somebody went, and either took data or did not take data. I didn't even realize it. I probably realized it. I've got incidents where a couple of years down the line, they figure out, "Aji, ye to customer data chala gaya, competitor ke paas hai." A couple of years later, okay? And that's after they've started losing margins, after they've started losing customers. That is how bad the current state is. But again, it's not as much as doom and gloom as I'm probably putting it. I'm a little bit pessimist in some of these areas. If you see the telecom, if I take that as a sector now, the technology that we have in this country is fairly state of the art, because we got into telecom much later than the developed countries, right? So we had the good fortune of learning from the mistakes which the so-called developed world put in telecom infrastructure. So our technology is good, but our larger problem is the volume. We are probably the largest in terms of volume, right, in terms of data. So the biggest challenge that all telecom companies face in terms of incident is there's too much of touch points with third-party agencies. And how do you control where information is flowing and where incidents are happening? Is it good? Yeah, it's kind of average is what I would say. Now, if I move to financial services, again, preparedness is different across a spectrum of, even for example, if you take banks. There is one spectrum of banks who are fairly well prepared in terms of at least being the ability to detect or even prevent a breach that's happening. Then there is another spectrum of banks which are somewhere where, the manufacturing companies, they don't even know something they're losing, which is where, your question on, should I check my bank balance every Saturday? The answer is you should probably check it every day. Why every Saturday? That's the way I see it. Or at least check all the SMSs that you get. If you don't get an SMS, call your bank or run to your bank immediately. मेरे को SMS नहीं आ रहा है, balance जा रहा है तो. So that's the other way of looking at it. But in terms of sum and substance, the other challenge that is there, irrespective of which industry or which sector that you are in, people's ability to monitor security incidents is also a lot dependent on the person sitting behind the screen. So the world is now moving to automation of some of these things. So we have simulated security incidents in companies which they thought themselves as, the best. We actually induced an incident in a controlled manner to see, are the guys watching those big black screens picking it up? 9 out of 10 cases, they don't pick it up, because that's human element or human error or fatigue. And these are 24/7 SOC monitoring agencies.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. So if you ask yourself where the security incident will hit first, if you take case of a bank, where the security incident will hit first, it will hit with the L1 analyst who is a part of support team, right? A customer will call up this call center and will probably say that my account is hacked. That will be with the customer care executive. If there is some internal issue, if someone notices something, if someone notices that his computer is infected with virus within a bank, what he will do, he will pick up the phone and he will call up the L1 support analyst. And I agree with Mr. Sundar that the preparedness is pathetic at that level. They don't know what is to be done when security incident, they are not even equipped to identify it as a security incident, let alone reacting it as a security incident. So preparedness starts there. Any other question?
Yeah. One
I
question
think,
here.
just hold on. I would like one question for Mr. Sanghvi. If there is anything related to forensic, let us give it a preference. Anyone for forensic related question? Yeah, someone at the back has a question. Hemant will.